Hey, what's up everyone? Linux Baron here. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to do it yourself Linux router. You may be familiar with routers in the consumer sense. These little plastic machines that have Ethernet ports on the back and some wireless transmitters on them. You plug them into a cable modem or maybe a ONT from a FiOS or other optical connection. The idea is you get an IP address from your ISP, and usually you plug it into a router like this. However, you can do the same thing without this box if you have a Linux machine with a couple extra Ethernet cards. You only need two connections. One card that goes to the ISP, however they give you your IP address. You have an Ethernet cable that goes to your router. And then a second one, which goes to your network, your inside network. The idea is you want to share that one internet connection from your ISP with all the machines in either your home or your business, something like that. So you can share your internet connection with all those machines just by using a Linux machine. So the more conceptual concept is that you're doing a process called network address translation, or NAT. Your machine is acting as a router, and it's providing network to all of your internal machines, and it's translating those into your outward facing connection. The only really important thing to take from this is that your Linux router or Linux machine needs two connections. It needs the one that goes to the ISP. That's this connection right here. And then it needs a second connection, probably a card that you bought and put into your Linux machine. Once you have this second card in your Linux machine, you can connect that to either a switch in your house, or you can just directly connect it to another single computer that you want to give internet access to. So you've got this router. It has two what are called interfaces. They're just network cards. Sometimes the interface can be a Wi-Fi card. Sometimes it's an Ethernet card. It's just something that does internet. All right, so let's set this up on this Linux machine that I'm in front of right now. It's helpful to use a visual tool. In my case, this is called HardInfo2, to get a sense of how your Linux machine is naming these devices. So you notice that I have two interfaces, which are network cards, graphically represented as these Ethernet ports. And they have names ENP112S0 and ENP115S0. Your names are likely to be very different than mine, but you will see two different graphically represented interfaces. The important thing to consider here is that this 112, this one has traffic. I don't want to show the IP address because I don't want the rest of the world to know my IP address with my ISP. But you can see there's one that has a whole bunch of traffic on it. That's this 112. And then another one which has almost none, which is the 115. The 112 is the one that goes to the outside world. The 115 is the one that I haven't set up yet, but it's the second Ethernet card or interface in this machine. Okay, so let's set it up. The tool we're going to use, and we're going to install it, is called firewall config. We're just going to run it. Okay, so let's switch to the permanent configuration because we're going to do this on a permanent basis. We're going to go to options and we're going to set up some zones. So the 112, which was the interface for my regular internet connection that my ISP gives me, we're going to throw it into a zone called external. It doesn't really matter what zones you use as long as you're consistent, but it's helpful for me to call the one that goes to the outside world external. And then the other one, which we haven't set up yet, we're going to put on the internal zone. Okay, now our external zone, we want to do something special with that zone. We're going to do a thing called masquerading. And this is the network address translation. When you masquerade an interface or a zone, you take this outside IP address and you make all the traffic from your network look like it's coming from that one interface. As far as the ISP is concerned, there's only one machine it's talking to. But your network has many, many machines, each going to this router that we're setting up right now as the gateway to the rest of the world. All right, so we've set up masquerading on the external zone, and it's not on the internal zone. Let's reload the firewall. And we can now quit the firewall utility. Now there's one other step we need to make on the router box. There's a file that we need to create in this folder right here. It lives in etc firewall-d policies. And the file we need to create is an XML file called policyint2x.xml. You can name the file anything you want as long as it's an XML file that lives in this policies folder. Okay, and I've already got it set up in another folder, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. But it's only 5 lines. The first line says it's an XML document. The next 4 lines describe the policy object. This policy object has an attribute called priority, which is 100, and it has a target, which is the accept policy. This tells the router that it's going to accept traffic from one zone, which is destined for another. In this case, it's accepting from the ingress or coming in, the internal zone right here. And then where is it going to accept it going to? The egress zone where it comes out, called external. So our machine is going to allow traffic coming from internal to get through to external. And then we close the policy object. So we'll save it. Okay, the next step is to set up the IP addresses. Now, for this, you either need to have received from your ISP some information, or you can actually look it up. You can use this tool called Resolve CTL, and it will show you for your current active interface what your DNS servers are. Take a note of this. 71.243.0.12 and 68.237.161.12. Those are my two DNS servers. We're going to need this information in a second. Okay, so let's configure our internal Ethernet card. We're going to say that it has a manual IP address. We're going to make the IP address 192.168.0.1. And we're going to give it a net mask 255.255.255.0. This address is special. Any address that starts with 192.168 is only used for internal networks. This is called a non-routable address. If you tried to connect this to your cable modem, it wouldn't work because the rest of the world is not allowed to talk to this address. It's a reserved range. So any address that begins with this is an internal. There are also a couple other reserved ranges, but this is the simplest one. All right, so we've got this set up on our Linux server, which is acting as a router. We've got the two cards. We can stop and restart to make sure that the internal card is actually running and trying to use that IP address. Okay, the next step is going to be on the internal devices that want to go through this Linux box to get to the outside world. And I'm going to switch over to my laptop now. Okay, I'm now sitting in front of my laptop. I'm going to log in. And what you'll notice is right now, I have no internet. So let's fix that. I've connected this laptop with an Ethernet cable to the internal interface of our Linux server, the router. Now what we have to do is set up that network card, that interface, so that it can talk to the router. We're going to change the IP address to manual. And we're going to use the same network, but a different address. We're going to use .2 instead of .1 for our client machine for the laptop. We're going to use the same network, the same net mask. And for the gateway, we're going to tell the laptop that anytime you want to send traffic to the rest of the world, you go through the IP address of the router's internal interface, this 192.168.0.1 that we set up previously. For DNS, we're going to use the same IP addresses that we looked at before. These were the ones that were provided by our ISP. I'm going to say apply. We're going to turn off and back on the interface. And now let's see. Yep, now from the laptop, we have internet, and we're only connected to the Linux router. So there we go. This is a quick introduction on how to DIY a Linux router. This is very handy in a lot of situations in a pinch. If you need to give internet to another machine and you don't have a standalone router handy. All right, I hope this was helpful to y'all, and have a great day.